every one of us. So may we open our mind to the full blessing. I'm going to try to see how we can get as far as possible with Daniel 11, and the rest going to be a kind of homework. Because we give you the structure, and that's all you need. That's what you really, really need. Daniel chapter 11. Is the easiest chapter because everything is literal. You just need to follow history and the fulfillment in the set. Now, the main confusion in Daniel 11 is the expression king of the north versus king of the south. It varies according to the kingdom that is occupying the north, according to the time. The last time we shared the structure as follows. Verse 1 to verse 2, dealing with Medo-Persia versus Greece. Verse 3 to verse 13, dealing with Greece only. Verse 14 to verse 30, pagan Rome. Verse 31 to 34, papal Rome, the little horn. Verse 35 to 39, dealing with French Revolution that has inflicted a deadly wound to the papacy in 1798. And then verse 40 to verse 45, dealing with the Eastern issue. Okay, so Syria versus Russia versus papacy and French Revolution. Now, among Adventists, we have two main, I would say, school of thought concerning Daniel 11, verse 40 to 45. So we are going to look closely to it and take the conclusion we need. Now, last time we stopped at verse 3 to verse 13. We were not going to have a time to go in detail from 14 to 30, 31 to 34, 35 to 39. So for that reason, I'm going to recommend this book. You see, Daniel and Revelation by Uriah Smith. It gave you in detail what you need. Okay? So you're going to do that homework for yourself to see how, with accuracy, the prophecy is fulfilled. So we are going to quickly run through it and spend some time on verse 40 to 45, because that is the main issue. And then we will be prepared to close the book of Daniel next Sabbath, God willing, and get from the whole teaching one conclusion, the parallel of Daniel 2, 7, 8, 11, and 12, and bring us to one and one single thing. The investigative judgment and atonement that prepare the people for the marriage of the Lamb. And that will bring every one of us to have a committed covenantal relationship with Christ for the marriage of the Lamb. And that is what the study of the book of Daniel should produce, should lead us to commit to a person, the person Christ, and then have a very personal, special, private relationship with him. So our whole Christian life is no longer about just going to church or going to heaven. To become a relationship with Christ for marriage of the Lamb, and the marriage will last for eternity. So it's a very vital relationship we should have if we understand the prophecy. So let's get into it quickly. Like I said, we are not going to be really going through verse 14 to 30 or 31 to 34 or 35 to 39. You're going to be reading these things. Okay. So let's go straight to 45, 40 to 45, where we have the main contradiction or controversy. All right. Daniel 11 from verse 40. And at the time of the end shall the king of the south push at him, and the king of the north shall come against him like a wild wind, with chariots, and with horsemen, and with many sheep. And he shall enter into the country, and shall overflow and pass over. At this moment, the king of the south is Egypt. And then the hymn represents France that has inflicted the deadly wound to the papacy in 1798. The king of the north represents Turkey. Now, in 1798, France entered Egypt as well, which was a part of the Ottoman Empire. Now, the Egyptians push, they were called the Mamelukes, they push and force and they fought against France, but they lost. And then this is known as the Battle of the Pyramids. So you can look it up, in history. Then France wanted to crush the army of Turkish Sultan and besiege the Acre, an Ottoman Empire walled city in the north. The Ottoman Empire declared war on France on September 11, 1998. Now, France's army led by Napoleon was defeated in 1799, right here. Then, for the first time in history, Napoleon retreated in 1799. As you see, we have the history that fulfilled this prophecy, like 100%. Now, verse 41, he shall enter in also into the glorious land, and many countries shall be overthrown, but these shall escape out of his hand, even Edom and Moab, and the sheep of the children of Ammon. The glorious land represents Palestine or Jerusalem. Okay. Now, Edom and Moab and Ammon is referring to the geographical territory they used to occupy. So, what do we have? So, abandoning the campaign in which 1/3 of the army has fallen victim to war and plague, the French retire from Saint Jean d'Arc. Yeah. Saint Jean d'Arc, that's in French, okay? Saint Jean d'Arc, d'Acre, sorry. Saint Jean d'Acre. And after a fatiguing march of 26 days, re-enter Cairo in Egypt. They thus abandon all the conquests they has made in Judea and the glorious land, Palestine, with all its provinces, here called countries, fell back again under the oppression rule of the Turk. Edom, Moab, and Ammon lying outside the limit of Palestine, south and east of the Dead Sea, and the Jordan were out of the line of march of the Turks from Syria to Egypt, and so escaped the ravages of that campaign. So this is just pure description of the history of what happened. So you can look at it from the book Daniel and Revelation, page 307. Now, the change is going to happen in 1457. There was something that was done that going to be brought back. In 1453, however, Constantinople was captured and has since remained in the hand of the Turks, the boldest advocate of the doctrine of the Muslim. So what happened is in 330, the capital of Roman Empire was moved from Rome to Constantinople. Now, later on, when the Roman army was overcome, guess what happened? They changed also Constantinople and they gave it another name. Now, and there was the name that was given is Istanbul. But the Istanbul name given was not official until 1930, like less than 100 years ago. Right now, you go to Turkey, look for the city, Istanbul. That used to be Constantinople. So the world we are living in today has been the world the prophecy has described in detail that we can follow. To continue, not only Egypt, but Syria and Turkey in Europe belong to the Mohammedans, and he has entered the glorious land, and a Muslim mosque occupied the site where once stood the Temple of Solomon. So we go to Jerusalem right now, you will see the very place that Solomon Temple was built at. Now you have a mosque right there. So that's how really prophecy is fulfilled. Verse 42, it says, he shall stretch forth his hand also upon the country, and the land of Egypt shall not the land of Egypt shall not escape. He is referring to Turkey or the Ottoman Empire. The much accurate prophecy will come when we're going to look into Revelation 9 and verse 11, where God gave the details, the year, the month, even the day this empire should fall. And this let us know that the Bible is the most accurate book on earth right now. The most accurate. So when we look at the interpretation that we stand for as Adventists, we have that in view of this testimony, the language will not be appropriate if applied to France. Egyptians did not desire to escape out of their hands. So they did desire escape from the hand of the Turks, but could not. So if when you follow carefully the history, you realize that the power is referring to in Daniel 11, verse 42, referring to the Turkish Empire, the Ottoman Empire. Why this precision are needed is because you have the preterism interpretation of the prophecy and the futurism, and they did not give you the historical interpretation that we need for a better understanding. For that reason, we had to go in detail with history to confirm the fulfillment of these events, these prophetic events, right? Now, verse 43. It said, "But he shall have power over the treasures of gold and of silver, and over all the precious things of Egypt. And the Libyans and Ethiopians shall be at his steps." So he shall have power over gold and silver. That represent the Turkey. Okay? The Ottoman Empire. The Libyan and Egyptian literally represent the people of Libya and the people of Ethiopia. This is North Africa. Now, history gave us the following fact. When the French were driven out of Egypt, the Turks took possession. The Sultan permitted the Egyptians to reorganize their government as it was before the French invasion. He asked the Egyptian neither soldier guns or no fortification, but left them to manage their own affair independently, with the important exception of putting the nation under tribute to himself. In the article, the agreement between the Sultan and the Pasha of Egypt, it was stimulated that the Egyptian should pay annually to the Turkish government a certain amount of gold and silver and 600,000 measure of corn and 400,000 of barley. So these are 100% historical fact, fulfilling and proving to us how accurate is the Bible prophetic word. Verse 44. "But tidings out of the east and out of the north shall trouble him. Therefore he shall go forth with great fury to destroy, and utterly to make away many." So the great tidings from the east represent the Persia that's coming back. And out of the north, that represent Russia, who is the north of Turkey, now shall trouble him. Him represent Turkey. So when you look at the record of history, you have the Crimean War. You can look it up on the internet or any accurate book. From 1853 to 1856, 3 good years of war between the Persians on the east and the Russian on the north. It was a very horrible war. But unfortunately, things continue this way, that the tidings from these powers troubled the Turkey. Their attitude and movement incite the Sultan to anger and revenge. So Russia, being the more aggressive party, was the object of attack. Turkey declared war on her powerful northern neighbor in 1853. The world looked on in amazement to see a government which had long been called the sick man of the East, a government whose army was dispirited by or demoralized, whose treasuries were empty, whose rulers were vile and imbeciles, and whose subjects were rebellious and threatening secession. Rush with such impetuosity into the conflict. The prophecy says that they should go forth with great fury. And when they thus went forth in the war, our forces, they were described in the profane vernacular of an American writer as fighting like devils. So England and France, it is true, soon come to the help of Turkey. But she went forth in the manner described, and as is reported, gained important victories before receiving the assistance of these powers. So when you check history, you will see that it gets to the point where England and France have to assist and help Turkey. And that's happened exactly like that. Now, verse 35. And he shall plant the tabernacle of his palace between the sea in the glorious holy mountain. Yet he shall come to his end, and none shall help him. So he that shall come to his end represent Turkey. The Turkey Empire want to come to the end. Now, between the sea, geographically referring to the dead Red Sea, okay, and the Mediterranean Sea. The tabernacle of his space, referring to Caliphate government headquarters. So Turkey, the time will come when it will remove from Constantinople, take up his abode in the Palestine, that is, plant his tabernacle between the Mediterranean Sea and the Red Sea. So it was a time that this was happening. And this thing are continuing until today. Why do you have a strong trouble today between Palestine and Israel? It's a long problem have been going on. Now we have among us and among our scholars, our doctors in theology, a little controversy. Those who stand for the fact that the fulfillment of Daniel 11, verse 40 to verse 45 is dealing with Syria and Russia against Turkey. Now, some also look at the end time prophecy and refer to it as the problem between the papacy and the French Revolution. Now, we are not going to read all of this, but it's called among us the Eastern question. Okay, so those of you that are interested to look into the high critics about the prophecy among us as a people, check this specific title, The Eastern Question. You're going to have the two main thoughts about it. Now, when it's come to my personal view, I will say this. It doesn't matter who we think is the most accurate based on what it says. But instead, I will stay with the interpretation of the pioneers and then take the spiritual conclusion that I need for my spiritual life. So our pioneers, they are not unanimous about this. Okay. Some stand for, some go against. So the SDA pioneers, unanimous position on the King of the North. These are for the pioneers. So we're going to look at some of them. Uriah Smith, that's why I show you his book. One more time, this one. When you read, he is very clear that the territory which I'm going to read all of this fine. Is that after a long interval, the king of the north and king of the south again appear on a stage of action. We have met with nothing to indicate that we are to look to any localities for these powers other than those which shortly after the death of Alexander constitute respectively the southern and northern division of his empire. The king of the south was at that time Egypt, and the king of the north that was Syria, including Thrace and Asia Minor. Egypt is still, by common agreement, the king of the south, while the territory which at first constituted the king of the north has been for the past 400 years wholly included within the dominion of the Sultan of Turkey. So Egypt and Turkey then, in connection with the power last under consideration, we must took for fulfillment of this verse before us. So that's where we stand. So, in this application of prophecy, call for a conflict spring up between Egypt and France during the French Revolution. We talked about it in few minutes ago. That was in 1798 to 1799, where France lost the war. So Turkey and France in 1798, which year, as we have seen, marked the beginning of the time of the end. If history testified that such a triangular war did break out in that year, it will be conclusive proof of the correctness of the application. So this way we're standing. Now, the next one, the next pioneers is the Lubarov. He stand as well that you're not going to read all of this. Let me go straight what he said. One brother who has intimated in his writing on the subject that the king of the north may be the pope told me that the sister White told him he never should have imitated any such thing, and that his idea will only create confusion. This was not put in print, but it was what he told me in autumn 1878. So you have this position among us where some people are saying that the king of the north will be papacy. And some hold on that the king of the north represent the Turkish Empire, the Ottoman Empire. Stephen Haskell, very clear, stand for Turkey as well. Percy Megan. Then someone else, Wagner. Wagner, let's see what the Wagner says. He said, the king of the north again. The end at the time of the end shall the king of the south push at him, and the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind. So now again, the king of the south and the king and of the north are before us. Egypt was the territory of the king of the south, and the king of the north in the division of Alexander the Great Empire, and the conquest of the Seleucids was the dominant power along the Bosphorus and Dardanelles and Asia Minor and Syria. It is the territory of Turkey. You see that? The Turkish Empire has for generations filled the dominion of the original king of the north. Now, there is, if anyone, personally, I would think it will be easier to marry the two taught, because this Turkish Empire is a Muslim empire. When it comes to the spiritual thing, this Muslim empire was created by the papacy. So they're ruling over them anyway. So I will suggest that there is the literal fulfillment and there is also the spiritual fulfillment. Now let's see what A.T. John says. A.T. John, what then are the scriptures that relate to Turkey in this time? The last verses of Daniel 11 relate to Turkey, which as king of the north, with its center at Constantinople, occupy in direct descent the place of the original king of the north in the division of the empire of Alexander the Great, as in the fourth verse and onward. And of this power it is written, he shall plant the tabernacle of his palace between the sea in the glorious holy mountain. Yet he shall come to his end. See that? He shall come to his end, and none shall help him. So this was the position of A.T. John as well. So we see that all the pioneers agree on this. Now, the pioneers' interpretation of Daniel 11, verse 10 to 45, verse other interpretation within Adventists today. So today you have some of the people. Follow carefully, please. So the pioneers believe that the king of the north in Daniel 11, verse 40 to 45 represent Turkey. Vance Farrell said in his book, Inside Daniel Revelation, in the segment of Daniel 11, verse 40 to 45, that the king of the north is papacy. Now, Turkey system as well as papacy system are both from the kingdom of this world of darkness. That is my interpretation, okay? All of these systems are coming to their end according to Daniel 11:45. And he shall plant the tabernacle of his palace between the sea and the glorious holy mountain. Yet he shall come to his end, and none shall help him. So what literally matters is that is have your name written and sealed in the book of the Lamb according to Daniel 12 as well. At that time, Thy people shall be delivered, everyone that shall be found written in the book. So what I'm trying to say is, don't bother too much about uh, the positions, but understand there's only two kingdoms in this universe. God selfless kingdom, God kingdom of selflessness, and sin kingdom of selfishness. What we need to focus on is how do we get our name written in the book of life and mature in character and get sealed. That is what I suggest to those who are following this teaching or this seminar on book of Daniel. So I say right here, so to have our name written in that book, successfully experience the invested judgment and atonement, we must overcome by the blood of the Lamb, which is the life of Jesus, to be reproduced in our mortal bodies. That is from 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 10 and verse 11. That is what we need to get our name sealed in the book of life. So the king of the north in Daniel 11 depend on which power occupied the north of Alexander the Great after it was divided into four, east, west, south, and north. Please, this is a very important. To simplify your understanding Daniel 11, this piece right here, do not miss it. So after Greece, Alexander the Great death, Greece was divided into four. So now the king of the north will depend on who occupied this space after this. So for example, in Daniel 11, verse 5, let me go to share a little bit this picture here. It's a difficult I have to do this. Okay. This is the location after the kingdom was broken into four. So you have Cassander right here at your west, Cassander at the west. You have Seleucus at the east. You have Lycurgus at the north. You have Ptolemy at the south. Now follow carefully. What happened is very quickly, Lysimachus conquer Cassander very fast. So that means now if you're going to talk about the king of the north, that will be the Lycurgus combined with Cassander. You see that? Later on, Seleucus conquer Lysimachus that had conquer Cassander. So the whole Seleucus, Lycurgus, and Cassander, all of these will represent what? The king of the north. So this is the very important way to understand this stuff. Otherwise, we're running into a lot of confusion if you don't follow carefully. So it depends on when and who occupy this specific territory. Are we clear enough? One more time. Originally, the kingdom was broken into four. The east, you have Seleucus. The west, you have Cassander. The north, you have Lycurgus. And the south, you have Ptolemy. Later on, right here, you can see right here, Cassander was very soon conquered by Lycurgus, and his kingdom, Greece and Macedon, are next to Thrace. And Lycurgus was in turn conquered by Seleucus, and Macedon and Thrace are next to Syria. So Syria later on going to be what? The king of the north for a time. So now let's go back to where we have been. So that should be clear for everybody so far. So in Daniel 11, verse 5, Lycomachus was the first king of the north. In verse 6, Lycomachus was conquered by Seleucid, and Seleucid become the new temporary king of the north. Daniel 11, verse 31 to 35, Rome become the king of the north. Then Daniel 11, verse 40 to 45, Turkish power become the king of the north in the last 5 verses of Daniel 11. Now, note, Rome then occupied that territory since 65 before Christ until 1453, when Turkey conquered the territory and has occupied it since. Now, note as well, from 65 before Christ to 31, Rome was the king of the north. But then in before Christ, 31 before Christ, Rome ruled the whole world. And it come to and it says, as is it is Turkey power. It's a Turkish power that now occupy Constantinople and change it into Istanbul. And as it is the Turkish power that now occupy Constantinople and hold the territory originally held by Lycomachus, the first king of the north. It's also plain enough that Turkish power is the power referred to in the word king of the north in the last 5 verses of Daniel 11. So this is where we come to the conclusion of Daniel chapter 11. It is the most accurate chapter when it's come to the detail of the prophetic event. All you need to do is take a time and read it. You got to read this stuff. It's very, very surprising to see how accurately the word of God is fulfilled. It's so long, we can't do all on the line, but I gave you the reference that you need. This book will help you. Look at Daniel and Revelation by Uriah Smith one more time, and then Haskell book, and then you can look at the Wagner interpretation, A.T. John interpretation, and you will see that it's very consistent enough. Now, based on the position of Van Farrell, you can do the spiritual application, okay? Because the Turkish system, which is a Muslim system, is controlled by papacy anyway. Anyway, so if you're going to extend it to that level, instead of opposing the two thoughts, I would say, what about we marry them? What about put it together instead? Okay? But the main thing is, what is the whole point? The whole point is you have the same message in Daniel 2, repeated in Daniel 7 with some detail, repeated in Daniel 8 with much details, repeated in Daniel 11 with a very much detail, and all leading to one thing: the in-verse judgment and atonement right before the second coming of Christ. And that prepared us for the marriage of the Lamb. So when you parallel Daniel 2, Daniel 7, Daniel 8, Daniel 11, you come to the conclusion of what? The succession of the kingdom of this world, then judgment in heaven, then Christ come to earth. Okay? That's how you're going to look at it. Number one, Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome, and then from Rome, pagan Rome, go to papal Rome, and right after that, the devil won't come in, and after that, you have judgment in heaven. Then after judgment in heaven, second coming of Christ. Now, between the judgment in heaven and the second coming of Christ, you must have the marriage of the Lamb. So we are right now at that time where you have a judgment in heaven right now, which we call the invested judgment and atonement. And the very and only purpose, follow carefully, the very and only purpose of the invested judgment and atonement is for the marriage of the Lamb, Revelation 19, verse 7 to 9. So that brings us to the reality of a true Christian experience, where we get committed to the person of Christ. We allow him now to cleanse us, according to Ephesians chapter 5, verse 25 to 27. I'm going to read that again. So this is what the study of the prophecy should produce, not just to know the name of these countries and see how things was fulfilled, but to realize, beside what's going on earth, which is the outer court, there are deep things going on in heaven, which is there, where we have the mystery of godliness being fulfilled in the sanctuary above. So remember, when we introduce these studies, we said that we need to look at the prophecy from two dimensions. The prophetic event of the mystery of iniquity going on earth, the outer court, according to Revelation 11, verse 1, and the fulfillment, verse 1 and 2, and the fulfillment of the mystery of iniquity, of godliness in the heavenly sanctuary, when the temple is measured, the altar, and they that are worshiping therein. So we look at the event going on earth, the king of the north with the king of the south. We look at how all was done with the French Revolution to the end. Now, what's going on in the heavenly court about the mystery of godliness? We see from 1844 that there's a deep event. Before that, Christ was officiating in the holy place. Then after that, he started from 1844, he entered into the most holy place to do the invested judgment and atonement work for his people and prepare them for the marriage of the Lamb. Ephesians 5, verse 24 to 27 read, "Husbands, love your wives, even as Christ also loved the church, and he gave himself for, that he might sanctify and cleanse it with the washing of water by the word." So Christ used his word, used the selflessness. Verse 27, that he might present it to himself, a glorious church, not having a spot or wrinkle or any such things, but that it should be holy and without blemish. And this is what the invested judgment and atonement should produce in our life in these days. This is the most important part of Daniel 2, 7, 8, and 11. So all we have discussed about the king of the north, king of the south, all the histories are revealing the fulfillment of the event of the mystery of iniquity on earth. Now we need to flip the script and look at what is the fulfillment of the event concerning the mystery of godliness, which is about measuring the temple the altar and those who are worshiping there in you and me, because our name are written in heaven. And what the measuring mean? Measuring mean judgment. You see that? So we allow him to measure us every day if we are fit. If we are fit to have our name and be sealed in the book of life. That's where we should focus much more our attention. So if you miss anything so far from the story of the book of Daniel, this is the main thing we should not miss. The true Christian life have nothing to do about going to church. True Christian life is to have the life of Christ fully manifest within you by the Holy Spirit daily. And that eternal life should abide in you. And then you grow and mature and be sealed. So question, which life is within you right now? Is the selfish life, which belongs to the outer court, which belongs to the mystery of iniquity, or selflessness, which belongs to the heavenly sanctuary, the mystery of godliness? Christ is judging and cleansing his church by his blood, his selfless life. So we will need to look closely in our home, in our marriage life, in our daily life. What is the principle display within you? That is the main thing. Because right now there's a prophetic event being fulfilled in the most holy place of heavenly sanctuary right now, where Christ is preparing the people that are going to overcome the beast, the image, the mark, and number. And that beast to overcome, that we call papacy, that's correct, it also means the selfishness within us. Because papacy is just the principle of selfishness, same thing. So if we have in us a spirit of rebellion, spirit of disobedience, according to Ephesians 2, verse 2, you have the same spirit of Satan, the same spirit of papacy. It's called the mark of the beast. The principle of selfishness, doing whatever we want as we please. This goes in everything we do. So what principle abide within you? How do you operate? What is leading you? What is the principle you live by? Because the Bible is very, very clear. What we shall be does not appear yet. 1 John chapter 3, verse 1 to 3. What we shall be does not appear yet, but right now we know we are God's children. What we shall be does not appear yet, but the Bible says we're going to be just like him, like Christ, when he shall appear. So we are little children right now. They're growing up to the full maturity of Christ. And everyone that have this hope in him sanctify himself, even as he is pure. So this is what the study of the prophecy should produce in us. So at this moment, every one of us needs to start asking himself, do I have the principle of Christ's selflessness abiding within me? So, partaking literally the prophetic event. Are you following me so far? So we are partaking how? Literally the prophetic event of the mystery of godliness going on right now in the most holy place, led by Christ, the high priest. This is the most important conclusion we can take from the story of Daniel. We will close this next week, God willing, with Daniel chapter 12, and we're going to come down to the same conclusion. So we should not miss this point at all. May we not just be intelligent people, but much more sanctified and holy unto God. So may all leave this line this morning with one burning question. Am I partaking literally the mystery of godliness going on in heaven right now? Can I say that I am a child of God right now and what I shall be does not appear yet, but I know, I'm sure I will be just like him? That is possible if the life of Christ abides in you daily and you are growing. Like a little mango plant. Mango plant can tell if he can speak. Can tell you, right now I'm a little mango plant, but what I shall be does not appear yet. But I know if you give me 10 years, I will be a big mango tree bearing fruit. Like your little daughter, she's a girl. She can't have a baby right now, but she can say, right now I'm a little girl, the what I shall be does not appear yet. I will be a mother to 5, 6, 7 children. Same thing for Christian life. Today you are a child of God, but the very principle must be in you. Every mother here or grandmother right here, the very life you have in you is the same life you have from, let's say, from birth or from the time you have been conceived in your mother's womb. It's the same life. But what happened is you have matured throughout the time. See? And by obeying the laws of life, you mature. Same thing for spiritual life. So we got to be very, very clear about this. If you're only going to church and don't have the selfless life of Christ abiding in you and maturing daily, you are missing out. You are missing out the measuring of the temple of God. You are missing out the invested judgment and atonement. You are much more missing out the deep relationship, very healing, refreshing, restoring relationship with Christ. This week I was spending some time on how our emotion heal us. And it was very fascinating to see a lot of stuff. There's a doctor, his name is Leonard Colwell. Look at his work if you want to. In his book, The Only Answer to Cancer, he proved by many, many infallible realities with patients, like documented, serious work, that 85% of cancers are caused by emotional pressure. 85. For that reason, in his protocol, he recommends a serious emotional healing and emotional support to the patient. And when he does that, guess what? A lot of patients recover. So in these last days, if you and me understand this level of how much our emotions are so important, and we develop a loving covenant relationship with Christ, where daily you wake up every day to contemplate the love of Christ. His love in his incarnation, how he stepped down from glory. When you read the book of Hebrews chapter 1, verse 6, God the Father commanded all the angels to worship Christ. And Christ stepped down from that glory to become one with us in nature. He took our sinful nature. When you take a time to process this thought, there's nothing too much to give to the Lord. Your time, your talent, your money, nothing's too much. And if you look at the cross, you see the King of the universe accept to be crucified naked. Oh, we are so miserable because every day we are claiming respect left and right. If you look at Christ, he never claimed any respect. He did only the will of the Father. I am calling you to free yourself. Let people talk bad about you. It's all right. If they say something that's correct, you need to correct in your life, correct it and move on. Don't take matters personal. Learn and grow. People might want to destroy your image, your reputation. Let it be. They call Christ by any name. They say they were possessed by Beelzebub, by demons. any kind of name in the book, but it does not change who he is. Let your conscience be free. Let your conscience be purged from all dead works. Let God only sanction you. Don't allow no human being, word, or opinion about you to matter. Now, not even your own opinion should matter about you because you don't even know yourself. So may we live a life that is beyond and above this regular life. May we live a life that makes sense to us only from what God says. So I'm inviting you to bring your life to brand new. Every day, live by the 7 principles of the life of Jesus. You can request that from us. It's somewhere in our presentations. How Christ lived daily. That is the key. If you live daily like that, I can guarantee you, your name will be sealed in the book of life. Guaranteed. If you live like that, I can guarantee that you're going to partake the marriage of the Lamb. Absolutely. And the good news is that life heal you physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. So how that life consists of what it consists of, you wake up in the morning, you meditate on the love of God and his plan, his loving plan for your life, and you surrender. From the time you are chosen in the mind of God, Ephesians 1 verse 4, to the time you will be seated in the throne of God, Revelation 3:21. You see God's marvelous plan for your life. You humble you and you surrender to him. In that surrender, you're going to receive the fresh battles of the Holy Spirit. And they're going to guide you throughout the day. And throughout the day, you still meditate on the love of God. Now, there's a law, by beholding, we are changed into the same image. If you spend your day, instead of meditating on what people has done to you, what people said to you, you switch your mind in thinking and meditate on what Christ has done and what Christ says about you. You're going to really influence your emotion. You meditate on the love of Christ until you are changed into the same image. That's how you're going to release oxytocin. And that is very healing hormone. Then number 3, so number 1 is you receive the Holy Spirit in the morning by surrendering. And how do you surrender? Meditate on his love and his plan for your life. Number 2, throughout the day, meditate on the love of God. And that have emotional healing. Number 3, you are in thanksgiving. May we learn to be thankful, not just to God, even to people around, to your spouse, to your children. Being thankful is living. And when you are thankful, you release dopamine and serotonin. See that? Then number 4, you have the testimony of the life of Christ. Daily, you need to make sure that selflessness is testified in your life. How you handle matters, you depend on God. Number 5, you set your affection on heavenly things. Christ says, rejoice because your name are written in the book of life. Imagine you are at work. You start, smiling. Somebody like, what happened? I just think about how my name is written in the book of heaven. They're gonna be like, what? So you are right now happy because your name is written in the book of life. Say yes, absolutely. And when you are rejoicing, you're gonna release what? Endorphin. and these happy hormones as well. And then number 6, you feel secure because all that will partake the matter of the Lamb need to be protected. That's why this last day we should not be afraid of Sunday law. Now, Christ will surely protect his wife, 100%. And that security keep you from stress. Because when you are afraid, your cortisol level will go up because your adrenal gland and your kidneys are under pressure. Then number 7, a daily loving covenant relationship with Christ. Every day you should know you are committed to the man Jesus for the marriage of the Lamb. You allow him to cleanse you daily. Live like this, and I can tell you one thing. Without that, that today you are a child of God. What you shall be does not appear. But you should know with certainty that when he shall appear, you will be just like him. That is called the assurance of eternal. That is true Christian. And that is what worth dying for. Amen. So may the Lord guide and lead us. The Lord bless us as we go into the end of the study of the book of Daniel. We're going to finish this coming Sabbath. And then the following we start with Revelation right off. Thank you so much for your time. The Lord bless you again. You can take few questions and